Hello my friends, welcome back to another Forces of Fantasy Warhammer the Old World update. And let me start off this update by wishing you all a very happy new year. Now, I usually put out one video for each update, but there have been quite a lot of updates over the past few weeks. Plus that there has been the Christmas season and I had family obligations. And after the Christmas season, my body decided to shut down. I was ill for a couple of days, and it was only until the weekend of New Year, that I started to recuperate a bit. Then I had some other stuff to do in and around the house, so that's why I have been putting this off for far too long, to quote a certain hobbit. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to look at several different articles today in chronological order. We're going to start with this one, The Noble History of the Tomb Kings of Camry, and as you might expect, since I expect you already read most of these, I'm just going over these real quick and just give you my thoughts. So, the history of the Tomb Kings of Camry is very much in a nutshell what it always has been. There were some ancient human cultures, and they lived in Nehekara. Then Cetra came along, he ascended the throne, and he unified the kings of Nehekara. He founded the mortuary cult because Cetra did not want to die. The Lich priests, or the priests of the cult, they promised Cetra to find him the cure for everlasting life. They couldn't, Cetra died, he got into a pyramid, other kings followed, and then one of the priests, after several generations, Nagash, he became a necromancer, he cast a great ritual, awakened the armies of the Tomb Kings, and then Cetra was a little bit upset, to say the least, that he did not find himself in his perfect body that he had expected and ruling his perfect land, but that he was now the ruler of a barren desert. Now, there's a little thing here that is different from what I read in earlier edition Tomb Kings books. It says that the risen monarchs, they demanded armies, and then the Lich priests, they raised the long dead warriors of the kingdoms. In the original lore, the skeleton soldiers, they were risen together with the Tomb Kings when Nagash's great spell failed. The spell, well, it worked for a part, but he should have been able to bind all the undead under his will. And that's where it failed, because he got stabbed by Alcadizar the Conqueror. So, now, after quite a while, it says here, there are some Bretonnians, they have a crusade, they enter Nehekara to steal treasures from the great tomb cities, and they strike down one of Cetra's most trusted lieutenants. This is all new lore. I was not able to find this in earlier Tomb Kings lore, nor in the Bretonnian lore. And then Cetra sets out, he gathers his mightiest host, and he sets off to the Border Princes, where the Tomb Kings starter box will clash with the Bretonnian starter box. Then we get to the Bretonnian history in the next article. So, Bretonnia has a more or less similar story. Bretonnia was a land ruled by the elves, then a human tribe, the Bretonni, came, and they were a very tribal culture. And then Gilles le Breton, the first and greatest of the Bretonnian king, he fought 12 battles with his companions to free the Bretonni from the orcs, beastmen, and other foul creatures, and thus he made the kingdom of Bretonnia. Then he became also the first Grail Knight, and we get here a little bit of the chivalric code. So if you want to be a knight, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you have to do. It doesn't say that you have to buy miniatures, although I would not have been above Games Workshop to put something like that in there. So the chivalric code, I think this is pretty much lifted from actual knightly vows and codes that they had in the Middle Ages. You get a little bit here about the Wood Elves, because Athel Loren is considered by the Bretonnians part of Bretonnia, although in effect it is its own realm, its own kingdom. We read a little bit about the Green Knight, who comes to the aid of the Bretonnians in desperate times, and he is also the one that if you are on a quest for the Grail, at some point you will have to face him and you will have to wound him. If you cannot, if you get killed, then your quest is over, but if you do manage to wound the Green Knight, then you have reached the end of your quest and you will find the Lady of the Lake awaiting with the Grail. And then we get the present day, and I believe this is the first time we actually get the present year, 2276. So that's around 25 years before the Great War against Chaos. Bretonnia is guarded by the valor of its knights. The cities and villages of the dukedoms are well defended, so it's a good country and they seek new opportunities to secure their borders. And when Cetra comes up from the south, that's one such opportunity. So the Bretonnians are going also towards the border princes to butt heads with Cetra. Then we get the article that I had expected to see a long time before now. The Tomb Kings of Camry miniature range revealed. First we get the two core boxes. We had already seen leaked pictures of the contents of the box. There's also some more leaks now about the contents of the army book, the rule book I mean, and the contents of the the prices. There's a price list leak. If I have to cover all of the leaks and rumors in this video as well, then it will take a lot longer than I have planned it to be. So I'm not going to do that. So here we get the Tomb Kings box with 2 blocks of 20 skeleton warriors, 2 blocks of 8 skeleton horsemen, the light horsemen with the bows and the heavy horsemen with the spears, 2 blocks of 16 skeleton archers here in the back, and we get the new Bone Dragon. They put the Lich Beast on the Bone Dragon so that you can have a Tomb King on foot. And then some chariots over there. And for Bretonnia, you get 12 Knights of the Realm. They made them into 2 lances of 6 each. You get 2 times 18 of the peasant militia, the men-at-arms. 1 block of 36 archers, although probably you can make this into smaller units if you want to. 3 Pegasus Knights and the new Bretonnian Duke or Baron on Pegasus. And we will see that kit a little bit later. In this article, they say that each box contains a full 1250 point army. Now, I wouldn't be me if I did not go ahead and check that against the points cost for the earlier edition miniatures. Of course, there's no Tomb King's Bone Dragon in 8th edition, so I had to guess the cost for that. I put it at 225, might have overestimated a little bit, but if I use all of the other points values as they are in the 8th edition rulebook, then you get a Tomb King's force of 1320 points. Or 1100 points, 1059, not counting the Bone Dragon, 1059 plus whatever the Bone Dragon is going to cost. If I do the same for Bretonnia, then I come at a total of 1059 points. So I guess it's safe to say that Bretonnians have gotten a bit more expensive. Maybe it's the Lord on the Pegasus, that this is now a Duke with a much better stat line that's gotten a bit more expensive. Or maybe some of the peasants have gotten more expensive, although I don't believe So we did not see them yet. We saw the men-at-arms with their bonuses, what they could have, but um, not the points cost for the men-at-arms themselves, I believe. So this might be the case that the points costs are, well, let's just say that they will be in the same ballpark as what they were in earlier editions of Warhammer. And then, of course, if you buy one of these boxes and you tweak with some upgrades and magic items, you can easily get a 1500 point army out of this. And then you just need to find 1 or 2 special or rare units to get it all up to an even 2000. Maybe add another character or 2 in there as well. And yeah, this if you want to start a Bretonnia or a Tomb King's army, then these starter boxes are a great deal for you. Let's continue with the article. The Warhammer the Old World rulebook will be for sale, of course, separately. It will also be as part of the boxes. It doesn't say here, you don't see the contents of the box in this article apart from the miniatures. But there will be a picture later on in another article where we will see it. So the rulebook will be on sale separately as well as included in those boxes. And we get also 2 books called Forces of Fantasy, which they blatantly stole from this podcast, I have been told, and Ravening Hordes. These detail the armies of good and the armies of evil, respectively. And then, if that's not enough for you, and of course it isn't, each army also gets its own arcane journal with even more army lists and special characters in there. Then we get some new Tomb King's miniatures. The Herald Nakav. And if you wonder what he has here on this scroll, these are the titles of Cetra, and he's reading them out prior to battle. That's what we learn in a later article at least. We get a new Battle Standard Bearer. Not sure if I dig the look of this one. I think it's got a little bit too much going on. I thought that the other Battle Standard Bearer, the older one with the very big banner top, the one that you got in resin only, I believe, I think that's the perfect Tomb King's Battle Standard. The Metal Battle Standard Bearer, that one was that one was a little bit too small for my taste, because that banner was the same size as the other banners for the regiments. But yeah, this one it can work. Maybe if you maybe use a little bit of a different color scheme. I think this is the face is drawing away some of the attention. Your eyes don't know what to focus on, because there's some red over here and there's some red over here and some red over there. So I think if they chose a different color of red for the banner itself, or maybe a different color altogether, that it would be a much better miniature. But it might just be my personal taste. So if you like this, then definitely go get it. Next up are the Tomb Swarms. Sad to say, also not to my taste. I like my swarms to come crawling and creeping over the ground. These are a little bit too dynamic. I see what they're getting for, but again, too much going on for my taste. The little scarabs that are on the ground that are just crawling there, and then there's this little box with a skeleton in one of them. That's, for me at least, enough. These look like Prince Apophis is doing the boogie woogie. So that's it for the new miniatures. Let's quickly move on to the next article. That was the Sunday preview. Prepare to enter the world of legend. Here we get the starter box contents for the Bretonians. So you get all the miniatures we mentioned, plus a set of dice, a set of templates, 2 range rulers, the rulebook, a reference sheet. I don't think this reference sheet will be sold separately with the rulebook. And of course some Bretonian transfers. For the Tomb Kings, the same thing, minus the transfers, and of course with different miniatures. Then we get the 3 books we just mentioned, the Arcane Journal for Bretonnia, plus the Bretonnian miniatures, the new plastic battle standard on Pegasus. We get the old Pegasus Knights coming back. We see the Grail Knights coming back in metal, the Battle Pilgrims in metal, the Mounted Yeomen all in metal. Of course, the horses are plastic. Handmaiden of the Lady is Forge World resin. Battle Standard Bearer Foot and Mounted is also Forge World resin. And the Questing Knight, the first Bretonnia miniature we got revealed, which is also, I believe, Forge World resin. So yeah, I think this says something about their demographic. This is definitely catered to people who don't like Finecast, and those are mostly the older generation, people who started with metal miniatures and who didn't like the feel of resin, apart from the Forge World resin, because that was a little bit prestigious. So that is why I think they went back to that. Then we also get dice and reference cards for the Kingdom of Bretonnia. We get the same thing for the Tomb Kings, the Arcane Journal. We get the Tomb Guard coming back, the Sepulchral Stalkers, or the Necropolis Knights, however you want to build them. The Necrosphinx is back, or the Cambrian War Sphinx. We get our first special character here, Cetra the Imperishable. Lich Priest, the Ushabti, also in metal again. And the Ushabti with the bows, even in metal. I believe those were only Finecast to begin with, so good to see those reappear in metal. We see the new Tomb King, the one that was revealed at the same time as the Questing Knight. The new Battle Standard Bearer I just showed you, and the Tomb Swarms. Harold Nakaf not going to be there in this first run, but also for the Tomb Kings we get a set of dice and reference cards. And then we get some more dice and reference cards for Warhammer, the Old World in itself, as well as some card sleeves. I do expect these cards and dice and card sleeves to run out really quickly and not get a reprint. So if you are someone who wants them, then do get online as soon as the pre-order opens and go get them, because they will be sold out really quickly, is my estimation. Here we see the bases that you can buy either separately or in packs, and I guess the largest ones are separately and the smaller ones in packs. So 20 square has completely disappeared. The other ones are still there, well, including some new ones. 30 by 60 is new. 60 by 100 might be new, might be something that they already had in the end times. 5075, they had that for the Giant in 7th edition already. 40 by 60 might also be new, don't know that one. And then we get the old modular movement trays. And something they also announce here is the Warhammer the Old World map, and that I will show you at the very end of this video. Then we get a new Old World Almanac article. We are here already in the new year, so we're starting to get to the end of these articles. This is a learn to play video. I'm sorry, I watched the video and I don't know anything more about playing the game than I did when reading these articles, specifically these first 4 about strategy phase, movement, combat, and shooting. So it's nice that I put it in put a video to it, but it didn't really bring me any new information. So for me, this felt as just a filler article. Then we got today the designer roundtable on how the new old lore was written. And here are some pretty interesting insights in here. I'm not going over the whole interview, you can read it for yourself. I'll put a link to this article and all the other articles in the video description, as you are used to by now. So some of the things we see here is that this time that the old world is set in, this is pretty much a golden age, and they say these are the armies that we want to focus on. These are the ones that already fit in with the lore naturally. So the vampire count leaders have been defeated, so there's no major vampire activity. The Skaven are fighting a civil war, and it took them a few centuries to recuperate from that, which is why the Skaven have passed on into legend for the humans. So it makes sense to set the world here. They said what this is going to be pretty much the Horus Heresy event, Siege of Terra event of the Warhammer, the old, Warhammer Fantasy timeline. And then we get a question here that I spent a whole video on. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go watch it after this one, of course. And that is, which special characters will be returning in Warhammer the Old World? Now, as we can expect, the Tomb King's special characters, they are around. So Cetro the Imperishable is back. The Green Knight is also present in Bretonnia. I expected him as well. If there are two examples of characters who have been around for hundreds or thousands of years. So naturally, they're around in this period too. And then you see in future books characters that you recognize returning, but at a younger age. Kings may currently be princes. I think that's a reference to Thorgrim Grudgebearer, who was around at this time, and it was only a few years after the Great War against Chaos had ended that he became king. So it might be referring to Thorgrim there. So for the dwarf players out there, expect to see a Prince Thorgrim, probably not yet on a throne of power, but definitely with a grudge to bring. Some thing here that we get, is there anything that's drastically different about the world in this era? And then they go on about technology, and they raise some interesting points. Technology is not so much different. It's not that you get more primitive pistols or firearms, because if we do that, then you can't use your old models anymore, and we want you to be able to do that. But there are some things that were around, and that were around in this time more prominently than in later era, and they mention the steam tank. Leonardo da Miragliano, he lived around the year 2000. He made 12 steam tanks, and by the time of the end times there's only 8 remaining. So Giorgio says here, an interesting difference here: in this time frame, steam tanks are no longer a relic to be revered and studied. They were the shiny new product. Well, that's not entirely the case, but because they're already 200 years old at this point, but they're still probably a lot less battered than they were back in the end times era. Let's see, we get less superstition, we don't get the colleges of magic. This is an interesting one that I glossed over in the reading of this article. There's also less superstition. By the end times, it was commonly claimed that there were only 12 steam tanks built ever, because that's what Games Workshop have been saying ever since 5th edition, 4th edition even. But that's a kind of math myth that spread in the end times. Really, there were loads of them. This was just normal. So, yeah, I guess then that steam tank technology is still there. And I think that might also bode very well for upgrade kits, because there were some very iconic steam tanks that you could buy upgrade kits for in 6th edition, and that you, with the later era steam tank, could no longer get, because also, well, for one, it wouldn't fit, and for two, Games Workshop stopped selling loose parts or individual pieces. So yeah, the College of Magic they mentioned earlier is they are not there. Were Tomb Kings always evil? Well, pretty much so, they say, because Cetra is basically trying to conquer the whole world, and if you don't follow his rule, then you get killed off. Kingdom of Bretonnia seems much as it was. Any major changes? They talk a bit about the heraldry. So they say we want to have a more unified army with many knights that have pledged allegiance to a duke or baron, and therefore carry his colors. I don't know if they're going to make this an integral part of the rules. I definitely hope not, because I painted up my Bretonnian army to have every knight in its own heraldic colors, and that is based on the 5th edition Bretonnia book. I'm definitely not going to repaint them, and I'm also not going to buy lots of new knights, because now I can't use my old knights anymore. I'm just going to work with movement trays and spacers, and that for me will have to do. So I hope that this will not going to be too much of a problem, and that we can still use our knights in the regular army, and that we don't have to go to the what do they call it over here, the exile army and the outcasts, where you can have a more unruly bunch of knightly heraldry mixed together. So yeah, that's the gist of this article, at least according to me. And then we get to our final article for today. Bretonnia Kit focus. The Knights of the Realm walk so their lords can fly. Pretty well chosen title, I think. So we get here the Pegasus Kit, the new Pegasus you see over here, and the rider that you can make as either a duke or a baron. That same Pegasus is used for the battle standard bearer, but it comes of course with a different character sprue. And then you get the foot knights. You can give them either a hand weapon, a shield, or great weapons. And there is going to be 20 in a box, they confirmed. So it's going to be a nice big box. I'm probably going to be getting a few boxes of the foot knights, so that I can make one regiment of 20 with great weapons and one regiment of 20 with hand weapon and shield. And I'm also going to grab the battle standard bearer on the Pegasus. Although those are not going to be very high priority for me, I think I want to focus first on getting the books and the accessories like the cards, the reference cards, and the dice maybe. Right, and then we get to the final thing I wanted to show you, and that is the Warhammer the Old World website. It has been updated since it was first launched. So we get here the 2 starter boxes. We get the introduction videos of the Tomb Kings and the Bretonnia, some shots from that, and a little bit of explanation about the Tomb Kings and their box. So here I have the Lich Priest and the Tomb King itself, Skeleton Warriors. And you get the same for the Bretonnians, what's in the Bretonnia starter box. The email subscription, newsletter subscription, and finally, and this is what it's all about, and a pretty much interactive map of the old world. So here you can drag it around and you can click some of these shields, not all of them, and they will give you a little bit of information here. These are the maps that we have seen pop up earlier. So this goes all the way into let me zoom out here a bit. All the way into Kislev and the Darklands, but well, Kislev is not clickable. What's up here is not clickable. And it also goes down to the south to the Tomb Kings. These big icons are for the different areas. So this is the land of Marak. And then you have also the city that's next to it, that's mentioned there. So for example, that is why Zandri is not next to the coast, because Zandri, based on real world Alexandria, is where it expected in the Nile Delta, and that's exactly where you expect to see the port city of Zandri. But for some reason they placed the marker for the land of Zandri a lot further into the desert. So here's the land of Camry, the necropolis of Camry, the Black Pyramid of Nagash. There's the tomb city of Camry. Yeah, so have some fun exploring this map. Again, a link will be in the description. That is going to be it for this video. I want to thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. I have some battle reports planned when the Old World hits. I will try to do a comparative battle report of 6th edition and the Old World with two very similar, if not exactly the same, armies of Bretonnia versus Tomb Kings. So stay tuned for that. It will take a little bit of filming and editing. And as with all of my battle reports, I will put a full version on my Patreon. Speaking of which, the Forces of Fantasy Patreon is non-tiered, so you can join for as little or as much as you like. And on it you can find some exclusive bonus content, as well as these full-length battle reports that I just mentioned. If you want more things about Warhammer, then I can also highly recommend the Forces of Fantasy podcast. You can find the Forces of Fantasy podcast on any of your regular podcast hosting platforms. We will continue our look at Warhammer Fantasy through the ages. We are now somewhere in the middle of 2nd edition, and then in a few months I think we will hit 3rd edition, and from there we move on slowly but surely towards the end times. And of course, any old world news that hits us will be mentioned on the podcast as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.